And Eric, I can remember these great tags.
Meet Trent Acid. With a career that spanned 15 years, Acid established himself as one of the premier talents throughout the independents and would shine wherever he showed up. With a list of accolades that spanned as long as the day, Acid seemed destined for mainstream pro wrestling success, whether that be by himself or with his longtime tag partner Johnny Kashmere as part of the Backseat Boyz tag team, where they won tag titles in many major independent promotions. While this success seemed to be inevitable at the time, Acid would face his own demons many times during his life that permanently altered the course of not only his career, but his life. Unfortunately, that is what we will be discussing in today's video. If you do enjoy this video and you want to see more videos about all the random and cool stuff that comes from professional wrestling, be sure to leave a like on this video and subscribe to the channel if you have not already. With that being said, let's get right into it. Real name Michael Verdi, he began wrestling in 1995 at just 14 years old and would wrestle throughout various independents in Philadelphia. He never received basic training in pro wrestling and took quickly to the industry. He got the name Trent Acid from a manager and a wrestler that he had worked with, and the name stuck with him after that. As Acid got older, he started to branch out to other independent promotions in New Jersey and Delaware starting in 1997, most notably working for Jersey All Pro Wrestling, or JAPW for short. It was around this time that he would meet Johnny Kashmere, also known as Johnny Kashmere, at a wrestling facility, and the two took a liking to each other. Shortly after this, the facility they would go to would close, and the many wrestlers who would frequent there began looking for new schools to train at, with many of them, including Acid and Kashmere, deciding on the Combat Zone wrestling facility. Little did they know this would change their careers drastically for the better. Both men wrestled for CZW in its infancy and would eventually join up as a tag team in the promotion that they were already performing on the independent scene by this time as the Backseat Boyz. During much of the early 2010s, the act would become one of the hottest acts in all of independent wrestling, winning tag gold almost anywhere they went, including the CZW tag titles on 3 occasions, as well as winning the ROH tag titles when they made a stop there, becoming the first team to hold both championships at the exact same time. On top of their success as a team, Acid would have a good amount of success as a singles wrestler, winning the Iron Man Championship in CZW, as well as winning both the Junior Heavyweight Championships in CZW and Big Japan Pro Wrestling. He was receiving acclaim from his performances in matches throughout the world, including a series of matches with Homicide across both CZW and ROH that opened a lot of people's eyes and showed them that he just might be the future of the sport. Despite all this, there were bigger plans for Acid, as CZW's owner John Zandig supposedly wanted to give Acid a run with the World Championship, which makes sense considering how over he was at the time and how he was positioned as essentially the face of their junior heavyweight division for years. The only problem with this is that if this was done, his partner, Johnny Kashmere, would have to take a back seat, no pun intended. Kashmere and Zandig were not exactly BFFs and had heat with each other for years at this point, stemming all the way back to Cage of Death 2, where they blew up at each other. If I had to guess, Acid realized that if he agreed to win the world title, then his tag partner would pretty much be out of CZW, as he didn't really have a place on the card otherwise. So Acid would make sure that Kashmere did not get Marty Jannetty'd, and the two left CZW in the middle of 2004 for this reason, as well as claims that Zandig called up Steve Corino and caused some bookings with his promotion. At the time, it didn't look like leaving would hurt either man that much, as they still had countless independent dates, with ROH being their most prevalent. However, Kashmere supposedly became increasingly erratic and developed a very poor reputation, which would lead to his departure from Ring of Honor. It was then that Acid realized that despite how much he loved and respected Kashmere, he had to prioritize his own career first. With that, he would make his return to CZW only a few months after leaving and face Teddy Hart in an insanely fun match to determine his future in the company. Acid would win and be reinstated to CZW. But he only had 2 other matches in the promotion before departing yet again in July of 2004 and did not return to the promotion until 2008. He thought that assistant booker Mike Burns was out to get him, although there is no reason to my knowledge as to why he would think that. Acid would also be out of ROH by the end of 2004 due to their attempt at using him as a singles wrestler at this time just not working out like they thought it would. From there, Acid still worked throughout multiple independents, including one founded by Kashmere known as Pro Wrestling Unplugged. He worked on and off for JAPW, and most notably in Juggalo Championship Wrestling, where he wrestled as a demon-esque character masquerading as a holy being, I guess? I don't have a ton of recommendations for this iteration of Acid, as I have not watched a ton of JCW due to lack of interest in the geeks who run the company, but I've heard nothing but great things about the character and the people who have watched it, so maybe I'll have to check that out at some point. Outside of that, in a dark match for WWE on Sunday Night Heat, Acid and the Backseat Boyz workload throughout pro wrestling would lighten more and more due to the constant unreliability of Kashmere no-showing bookings, as well as Acid's personal problems slowly taking over. In the later years of his career, Acid was very open about his drug addiction. By 2008, Acid's life was slowly getting out of control, with fans on message boards talking about how they felt Trent was under the influence at shows and supposedly may have passed out during a match. Acid was arrested in July of that year for a litany of charges stemming from an altercation he had with a childhood friend and possession of a controlled substance by someone who was not registered. He spent 7 months in prison before being released at the beginning of 2009, and it was there that Acid seemingly was committed to getting his life back on track. He wrestled more that year than he did the year before, and even returned to CZW before he got arrested, and continued what he started when he got out. His performances were not well received for the most part, but he was happy and seemingly healthy, and surely his work would get better over time. Trent seemed to be turning the corner until he would be arrested yet again for controlled substances. CZW's new owner at the time, DJ Hyde, decided not to use Acid again and thought that Acid taking a break from the industry as a whole would do him a favor. Despite the setback, Acid reunited with Kashmere, and they announced a reunion tour for the Backseat Boyz. Kashmere once again would pull out a booking at the last minute, and the New York State Athletic Commission would not clear Acid to compete on these shows. The two men would have a falling out shortly after this due to Acid blaming Kashmere for not only his unprofessionalism, but blaming him for every possible issue plaguing Acid at the time. Two men would never reconcile. What is believed to be Acid's last match of his career took place for JCW on March 20th, 2010. It was said that he was in good spirits, but there were obvious concerns that he would go into the deep end with the environment of a JCW show being filled with drugs and alcohol. In April of that year, Acid would be arrested yet again, this time for being in possession of heroin and drug paraphernalia. He was sentenced to a maximum of 23 months of confinement in May, and was also ordered by the court to complete a rehabilitation program. Before he was able to complete any of those things, Acid would unfortunately pass away on June 18th, 2010 at the age of 29. The cause of death was determined to be a drug overdose. In the weeks following, Ring of Honor and CZW would give Acid a 10-bell salute before their show, and an event was organized by CZW and JEPW in collaboration titled Acid Fest in memory of Acid, where the event was free of charge with an Acid donation of $10 to go towards funeral costs. The event raised over $7,500 in donations alone. Additional money was raised through merchandise sales and an auction held for a watch that looked like the WWE spinner belt, which was donated by John Cena. At the event, DJ Hyde inducted Acid into the Hardcore Hall of Fame and has since been inducted into the CZW Hall of Fame and the Indie Wrestling Hall of Fame. Acid was featured on a documentary where I and a lot of people first learned about him on, titled Card Subject to Change, and it documented the journey of many independent wrestlers, with Acid being one of the subjects. It was here where he would talk more candidly about his addiction, and even talked about one time where he would OD and wake up days later. He passed away during the making of the documentary, so it would later be released and dedicated to his memory. I mean this genuinely, and I'm not just saying this because the individual in question has died. I truly believe that he would have been a huge beneficiary to the success pro wrestling had in the 2010s. Even if he never went to WWE and he stayed on the independents or went to TNA, the talent pool back then, especially in companies like ROH, were an embarrassment of riches, and it only got stronger and stronger throughout time. Acid would have fit like a glove in virtually any promotion, assuming he got clean. I don't think his battles with addiction should define Acid as a performer or as a person, because he was so much more than what people have said about him in the last 14 years. However, his story has and will continue to serve as a cautionary tale to wrestlers across the industry on what not to do, and while I feel that's very unfortunate, it's also good that wrestlers are evolving and not repeating the mistakes made by those before them before it ruins their lives. As most do, the story of Trent Acid will be remembered for its sad ending, but it should be remembered for the impact he had on pro wrestling and the contributions that he made to the industry. I'll remember him for his performance in Cage of Death 5 in his series with Homicide. I'll remember him for his run as part of the Backseat Boyz, despite how it might have ended. Those closest to him will remember how kind and funny and considerate he was, even during his lowest points. He was one of one, and professional wrestling has not and will not ever be the same without him in it. I'm going to end the video here because I don't feel right doing my usual outro for this video, but I will leave you with one question. What will you remember Trent Acid for? Thank you for watching. I hope to see you in the next video, and of course, rest in peace to Michael Trent Acid Verdi.